This video today is going to be over evaluating functions and finding domain and range from a couple situations. So let me pull up the first thing that we need. All right, this should be the paper that we have here in front of us. Okay, evaluating functions 4. When we are evaluating functions, you can use function notation. Okay, so that's what we're going to be using, f of x. So this right here is said f of x. That's how you say this. F of x equals 2x minus 1. You are going to be able to evaluate functions when given f of 3, when the number is in the parentheses. Okay, so when the number is inside the parentheses, you are given the x value and you are trying to find the y value. Now, the other part is when it says f of x equals, when it's set equal to it. Okay, so when a number is set equal to f of x, then you are given the y value and you are supposed to find the x. F of x equals is the same as y equals. They can be used interchangeably. So now let's practice. Let's use a graph and be able to try and find this. So if I move this up here, let's look at these. It's saying when x is 0, what is the y? So this is the same as saying f of 0. They want to know f of 0. When x is 0, what is y? That's this right here, 1, 2, 3. So your answer is going to be y equals -3. Try and do the same thing here on number 2. If they give you they give you x equals -4. One way we can write that is f of -4. Okay, so now if they tell us that, they're giving us x equals -4, what is the y value? Well, if I go here to where x is -4, here's the x-axis, 1, 2, 3, 4. Where does it cross? It touches the y, it touches right here at -4, and the y number is 0. So I'm going to get y equals 0. Okay, so let me erase these. Now, if they tell us y equals 0, what is that? Excuse me, I have to sneeze. What is that the same of if we write it in function notation? Well, y equals 0 is the same as f of x equals 0. So where does y equal 0? Y equals 0, the y number right here, it equals 0. The y number equals 0, and here is your x right here. So it's saying, right, when the y number is 0, what is your x value? My x value is -4. Let's try and do this with number 4. It says y of -3. That's the same as saying f of x equals -3. Well, when y is -3, they want us to find the x value. So let's go over here and find where y is -3. That's this right here. What's my x number? This point right here is 0, -3. So x equals 0. Well, what if we had it from an equation? So let me move my paper up right here. And it's telling us when we are given f of x equals 3 times x plus 2, they want us to evaluate. So let's see what we are supposed to do. When it says f of -4, when it's inside the parentheses, that means my x number is 4. So I've got f of x equals 3 times x, I'm not going to write the x, plus 2. They give me the x. They say when x is -4, what is my y value? Remember, f of x is the same as y equals. Put that in the calculator or do this to where we have -4 plus 2. This gives me -2 times 3. My answer should be -6. So you can write y equals -6 or f of x equals -6. Those mean the same thing. Try and do that on letter B, just like what we just did. It tells me f of 0. That means the x number is the 0. So if I write my function, f of x equals 3 times, instead of x, I'm going to leave it blank, plus 2. So I'm going to put 0 in here. So now, evaluate this. Find out what your answer is. I have f of x equals, put that in the calculator, or 3 times 2, that gives me 6. Or you can write it as y equals 6. Well, that's what you do when the number is inside the parentheses. What about when it's set equal to? Well, we already talked about the fact that when they were set equal to, giving me the y values. This is the same as saying y equals 27, and I'm trying to find the x. See, if I have my function f of x equals 3 times x plus 2, they are giving me the f of x. So right here, let me erase where f of x is and let me put 27 there. Now, we need to solve in order to find out what x is. Or put it in the calculator with the Desmos, and you can put it in the calculator and find your answer. So if we remember how to do that, right, you put the left-hand side into set it equal to y, and the right-hand side, you put both of those equations in there. You can look at one of the other videos on solving equations with Desmos. I'm going to go ahead and do this by hand. So I bring the 27 down. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 2 is 6. So you do the distributive property first. Now I subtract 6 from each side. I get 21 equals 3x. I divide each side by 3. So my answer is x equals 7. All right. So now try and do letter D just like I did letter C. You could pause the video and then come back and see how you did. So again, if I have the equation, the function f of x equals 3 times x plus 2. This is telling me that f of x is 24. So instead of f of x, I'm going to get rid of that and I'm going to put 24 in there. Now, once I've substituted, now let's solve. Well, the 24 comes down. I have 3 times x, which gives me 3x. 3 times 2, which gives me 6. Okay, so now what do you do to solve? Subtract 6 from each side. And I get 18 equals 3x. Then when I divide by 3, I get 6 equals x, or I can write it as x equals 6. Both of those are the same. They are equivalent. And that's the way that you should be evaluating these if you are given numbers that are inside the parentheses or set equal to. So now let's look at the next part. Move my paper over. We'll come back here just a second. All right, now we are looking at domain and range given a situation. This tells me a certain online game charges an initial fee of $5 plus a monthly fee of $3. The total cost can be found by using the equation C equals 5 plus 3M, or C equals 3m plus 5, where m represents the number of months the game is playing. Now, it's asking you to find the domain and the range in words. Well, let's remember, we talk about the phrase Dr. XY. Dr. XY, that helps me remember that domain is the X and range is the Y. Well, let's label here X and Y. So that means this, the X axis is my domain, the Y axis is my range. So if I have to write this in words, my domain, the domain is the number of months. Now the range, I move this up, my range is the Y value, the range is the total cost. The next thing it's asking us is would this graph of the situation be continuous or discrete? Well, let's remember that when we are talking about discrete and continuous, discrete has to be specific values. So right here, when you're talking about discrete, it has to be specific values. Continuous means it can be any number between 2 points. So it could be 0.9, 0.99999. When you look at this, you're on the graph alone, you're going to see that you have dots on the graph. So anytime you have dots, that's going to give you specific values, certain values. So this is going to be discrete. See if I can write this down here. Discrete because you only use specific values. And in this word problem, it's talking about initial fee and monthly fee. You're only paying for your amounts each month. Okay, so you don't have to pay for a half a month. It's each month, so it's specific values, and that's why it's discrete. Now, let's see if I can zoom out a little bit. It asks me to use inequality notation to represent the domain and range. Well, in this case, I don't know why it said any inequality notation. So really, because here's why. We can't use inequality notation because this is discrete. Oh, I just drew all the line through all my words. So when we are trying to find the domain and range of this, let's see if I can get my graph. Where'd it go? The whole thing disappeared. There we go. The first thing you have to do when it is discrete is we're going to have to go up here and we're going to have to find my ordered pairs. So, and we're going to write down our ordered pairs. So this first one right here is 0, 5. That's this ordered pair. Then I have 1 and 8. That's the next one. So I'm going to write 1 and 8. 2 and 11 is the next one. And I have 3 and 14. The next one is 4 and 17. Then I have 5 and 20. And the last one on the graph is 6 and 22. Okay, so once we have our ordered pairs, now to find our domain, we are going to write our X values. Domain is all these X values right here. So that's why when we go down here, let me see if I can zoom out a little bit. Oh, it always disappears when I do that. All right. So when I go to write my domain I'm going to use set notation, and I'm going to write all those X numbers. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. My range are the set of Y numbers. So that's what I did not highlight. So they go, let's see, I've got 5, 8, 11, 14, 17, 20, and 22. Now, it says, does this graph make sense for the situation? Why or why not? When you're talking about the online gaming, okay, is it supposed to be just a specific points, or am I going to pay, will I ever pay for my online gaming service? Will I ever pay $6.222? No, I won't ever pay like 0.333, 0.444. I'm either going to pay $5, $8, $11. So each month I pay only a specific amount. So in this case, I keep making marks on here. In this case, when it says, does this graph make sense? Your answer is going to be yes. Yes, because you are only, let me see, only having to pay a specific amount for each month. You won't pay a half a cent for part of a month or a third of a month or anything like that. So now let's look, what if they took this problem and they gave it to us, but this time they gave us a line for the graph. Okay, it's the same problem, and it's asking us to state in words, what is the domain and range of the situation? So look at this graph, let's label it and state what our domain and range is. Well, remember, Dr. XY. Here's my X, here's my Y. My domain is my X value. The domain is the number of months. The range are the Y values. So the range, that's this right here, is the total cost. Now, in this case right here, it says, will the graph of the situation be continuous or discrete? Well, the graph in this case, the graph is continuous. It's not going to be the best choice for this, and that's what we talked about a minute ago. But in this case, it is continuous because we have a line graphed. In this case, it's trying to say that it's every number between 0 and 5 that we could be paying for a half a month, a third of a month. So the last part of this right here is talking about what is the domain and range of the function using inequality notation. I'm having a hard time here getting this all put down here. All right. So I'll write this up here. It'll make it easier to be able to see and have the graph. Okay, so when we are doing domain and range with the graph like your domain, the domain is going to be your X values. So your X go from left to right. So if I box them in, it starts here at 0 and it goes out here, it looks to about 6.2. It's somewhere roughly around there. So it's from 0 to 6.2. So we would write that as 0 less than or equal to X less than or equal to 6.2. Now our range are our Y values. So we're going to write it right with the Y in the middle. and it starts at the bottom and goes to the top. So the lowest this thing goes to is 5. So it goes from 5 up to 24 on your graph. So I'm going to have 5 less than or equal to y less than or equal to 24. That is your domain and range. Now the last problem says, does this make sense? This is not going to make sense because you're not going to pay a half a cent for something for each month on your gaming. You're either going to pay for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. So this down at the bottom, when I'm talking about number 4, does the graph make sense? The answer is going to be no, because you don't pay, for example, a half a cent in a charge. You're going to pay specific amounts. And when you have to pay specific amounts, that means that your situation needs to be discrete.